Hi, welcome back to the Nocturnal Space Workshop. I'm Trezh and I've just come back from a holiday. Before I went on the holiday, I was painting up some Chaos Space Marines. One of the last things I did was give them a heavy wash with some of my homemade mud wash. However, they've come out, the final fit's come out kind of grainier than I was expecting, which looks cool. I kind of like it. But it's grainier than I was expecting. That's because I was using actually a really cheap craft craft paint to paint these miniatures with. If I show you here, okay, so this is just black and brown paint mixed together with a lot of water, and it's just cheap craft paint. Now if I just tilt it slightly, you'll see all this residue left at the bottom. Now that residue is the granular pigment that's sort of separated from the liquid, and that's what's happened on the models. All the grains, the individual grains of pigment have sort of separated and it's left a grainy, dirty effect. Now that's fine because they are actually meant to be dirty, so that's not too bad. But it's not the actual effect I was going for. So I'm going to give it a quick wash with my normal mud wash, which is just, again, black and brown mixed together. It's just the slightly better quality of the black and brown paint. This one doesn't tend to separate like the other one does. So I've got 3 steps I want to do now. First of all, I'm going to use a little bit of watered down isopropyl alcohol just to see if I can remove some of the residue, the granular residue where it's a little bit too much. Then I'm going to go over it with some of my normal mud wash, and then once I've done that, I'm then going to do the eyes. I can't decide green or I kind of want, right, so green I like because it's sort of green and spooky. But I also kind of feel like orange would be cool because it's like they're burning from within with kind of energy, that kind of thing. So I'm not sure, green or orange. So I'm going to think about that as I go along. I began cleaning up the shoulder pad of this particular mini. I just mixed up a little bit of isopropyl alcohol with some water, made it nice and diluted, and then used a Q-tip to very gently rub the surface of the shoulder pad. I didn't really notice much of a difference, to be honest, but I could see on the Q-tip that it was rubbing some off, and after a couple of passes I could see it was lightening ever so slightly. So it seemed to be working. With the success of this first mini, I thought I'd go ahead and do the rest of the warband off camera. I didn't think you'd want to see me rubbing the shoulder pauldrons of all the minis. However, after doing the Aspiring Champion, well, that one didn't go quite so well. Straight away it took the full top layer of the white off, exposing the undercoat underneath. Rather than panicking though, I just got a little bit of bolt gun metal and decided to turn it into battle damage. It's a little bit shiny at the moment because obviously the rest of it's got the weathering on, but with the next layer of weathering, that's going to hopefully blend it in. Speaking of which, I'm actually going to highlight up the metal. I forgot about that. I need to highlight up from bolt gun metal to, what have I got? Chainmail, and possibly even a little bit of mithril silver. I've just given a mud wash now onto the white parts, so onto the pauldrons and the helmets of some of them, just onto the areas that I actually want it on, and then very gently just dabbing it with a bit of kitchen paper just to take it off again. And I've gone around and just done that for a couple of layers, building it up. Then for the flamer guy and the plasma gun guy, I wanted the muzzles of the guns to look like like the metal had become scorched from the heat being produced. So to do this, I simply got black, blue, purple and red paint, and then I watered it down, just sort of eyeballing it to a consistency that I liked, and then just put that on with the black on the very end of the muzzle, then working back to the red until I had kind of a rainbow effect. Very watered down so it all blends together. Then on the plasma gun itself, I want the plasma chamber, you know, the ribbed area, I want that to be a little bit brighter. So I'm just going to go overbrushing with a bit of white and then using a little bit of the fluorescent blue over the top of that, so hopefully that will make it really pop. Originally I was thinking of actually having the recesses brighter and the raised areas darker, so it looks like it's some kind of ceramic plating that sort of, you know, it's darker where it's cooler on the outside and it's warmer on the inside. But I don't know, I've always done it where it's brighter on the raised areas, just because it reminds me of the warp core on the Starship Enterprise from the Star Trek The Next Generation. I began highlighting the metallic parts using Citadel chainmail, just going around each individual model and picking out any little points that I felt I wanted to make pop. A lot of the writing on the shoulder pauldrons had kind of faded with the different stages of washes and so on, so I used a little bit of watered down red and went around just picking out little details here and there to make that pop a little bit more as well. And I wanted to highlight some of the purple as well, so I watered down some of the fluorescent magenta and I went around with that again, just again highlighting it with a couple of coats here and there where I felt I wanted to make it pop on each individual model. Then for final highlight stage on the metallics, I went around with some mithril silver, just once again picking out little details here and there that I wanted to make pop. Then you remember this guy that I was trying to clean up at the very beginning? It was around about this stage with the mithril silver that I noticed that quite a lot of the white paint had rubbed off completely on the shoulder pauldron. Now, that didn't happen at the beginning, so it's like the isopropyl alcohol. Okay, first of all, I hadn't watered it down as much as I'd meant to, but it's like the isopropyl alcohol had continued to actually remove the paint after I'd finished. So yeah, lesson learned there. Water it down a lot more if I want to do this, but also use a lot less of it in general because it will continue to remove the paint afterwards, I think. I don't know what happened. So I just went back and repainted it, stippling on the bone white and then some pure white over the top. And now I need to let that dry completely before I can apply a mud wash again. So while I'm waiting for that to dry, a little bit earlier I found my old camcorder. So I thought it might be kind of fun just to get a little bit of B-roll on this, see what it turns out like. For the eyes, I finally decided to go for neon green. Now the neon paints, although they give a good strong colour, they are quite thin and I knew I was going to have to build up a couple of layers. For the first layer, I allowed that to actually overspill slightly. That would then create kind of a glowing effect on the armour afterwards. Then the second layer I just wanted to fill in the eyes and give a good block colour. Then with a little dab of white in the very centre, when I go over with the final layer of the neon green, that's going to really pop in the middle where the white is, and then it's going to get darker as it goes out, with, as I say, the glowing effect on the outside where the overspill was. I then decided that my book bearer, who's kind of a wannabe sorcerer, needs a little bit more decoration on his helmet, so I decided to add a little bit more text just in white to, contrast against the dark purple armour. Once I'd added this to the book bearer, I thought, you know what, that looks kind of cool, so I went round and added it to some of the other guys' armour as well. And finally for the bases, originally I was going to go for kind of a really dirty, earthy colour, so I just wanted it to be really dark and muddy. However, I was also originally going to do metallic armour. So since I've now gone for purple armour, I want to contrast that, so I decided to go with kind of a desert yellow that then I could go over with several dark washes to really dirty it up. I figured that the desert yellow would really kind of complement the purple. This is the last one now. Painting these bases though, it's really boring. I don't mean the actual painting, although it is a bit dull, just, monotonous, repetitive, going over and over again with the paint, but I realised that it's kind of dull. I want them to be a little bit more interesting, so as I've been painting them I was thinking of what else could I do to make it a little bit more interesting. And I did think about adding like some twigs and trees and things like that, but I don't know, that I want it to look deathly and dark and maybe a little bit more surreal, abstract maybe, not, I don't want it necessarily to look realistic. So I think what I'm going to do is, once this is dried, I'm going to give it a dry brush with some off-white, the same off-white I've been using for all the other bony bits. And then once that's dried, I'm going to mix up some Mod Podge with some red, and I'm going to slather it all over the base, and that's going to look like blood spilled, like they're literally wading through the blood of their enemies. I think that could be cool. So I think this is going to take a lot longer than I was expecting because of how thick Mod Podge is. I'm using like an old paintbrush. It's already all, you know, dried up and nasty on the end of the bristles. But I'm just using that to put it on the base, and then I'm using a sculpting tool as well to kind of tease it into the, you know, the smaller areas around the feet, so it's not just like getting, you know, layered up over the legs. It's a little bit more fiddly than I was expecting it to be, but that's okay. I'll get there eventually. I've only got 10 to do. So anyway, gonna get these done, and then hopefully when I come and have a look tomorrow, it'll all be dried and it'll look awesome. Or I've just ruined my models. We'll see tomorrow, I guess. Well, it's a day later. I've got to say, it's a bit redder than I was expecting. I've done this before where I've mixed a little bit of red paint with Mod Podge, and it's always dried a little bit clearer. I think maybe 2 drops was too much of the red paint. I think just 1 drop would have been okay. Either that, or what's happened is the Mod Podge has kind of dried over the top, and then that's created a seal so the paint underneath cannot dry. So who knows, with time it may dry out a little bit further and become more clear, or it may just stay this cloudy sort of effect or whatever. But that's fine, I kind of like it though. It's not what I was intending. I did just want it to look like spilled blood, but instead it looks like they're walking upon meat. You know, like they're actually walking through some chaos wasteland that's actually made of flesh itself or something, I don't know. But yeah, not what I was planning, but I kind of like it. I'll get some close-up shots so you can have a better look. In fact, let me show you this. So this is the camcorder I was showing you earlier, getting some shots with earlier. So when I first started making like short films and things like that, this is the camcorder that I first started using, simply because it was the most affordable camera I could get. This was back in the olden days before we all had, you know, cameras on our phones and all that kind of thing. And it served me well for many years. Eventually though I did decide to upgrade to a proper camera, well, a proper camera. It's proper for someone like me on a budget of mine, but you know. Anyway, these lenses are for my Canon camera. Now, that's a 50mm lens. You can tell because it says 50mm on the side. That one's 24mm lens. It says 24 on the side. The lower the number, the wider the shot. When I first got my Canon camera, the 50mm lens was the only one that I had. So I got this adapter. This is an adapter that's designed to screw onto the front of a lens, changing a normal 50mm lens into a wide lens. Now it was okay, but it's not the best quality, which is why eventually I got myself a 24mm lens, like a proper wide lens instead of the 50mm. I'm waffling, I know, but there is a point to it. That part comes off. So that part by itself, instead of being a wide lens adapter, that's a macro adapter, so it allows you to look at things close up. With the 50mm lens, you have to get really close up in order to get a shot. So close, in fact, that the camera actually casts a shadow. So it does make it difficult to get a good close-up shot. On the 24mm lens, you can get a little bit further away, but it's kind of fixed. Now, what I found out, holding this in front of the camcorder, actually gets you really, really good close-up shots. I'll show you. So, if I switch this on now, and then start filming. Okay, so this is the shot through the camcorder with the lens on. That's it with the lens off. And then if I zoom in, there we are. I can get really, really close up. So close that you can see the individual particles of pigment in there. So that's the writing on the shoulder pauldrons up close. As you can see, it's just dots. If you look at the bolt pistol there, and you look at the spiky bits on top, and at this kind of zoom lens, you can actually see the individual layers of paint where I've highlighted through. So instead of it just being like looking like it's shiny on the edges, you can actually see the individual layers of paint. So there you can see the glowing green eyes up close. So yeah, so when I first did this, I was just sort of playing around. I didn't think it would have any actual practical application, But it turns out that using this camera with this lens, I've actually developed a really good macro close-up camera. Now, not only that, this camera also has night vision on it. Okay, so with all the lights switched off, it's completely pitch black in here. What I'm showing you now is actually through my normal Canon camera, and I'm now going to switch over to the camcorder. There we are. So completely pitch black. But when I flick the switch for the night vision, suddenly, there we are. How cool is that? Look at that, models in night vision. Ooh. Okay, cool. Now where's my lens gone? There we are. Let me see if this works. So there you go. I've now got a macro night vision camera. Need a little bit more practice with it. I need to figure out a way to actually get that put on permanently. But yeah, that amused me anyway. So I'm going to get a couple more shots of these. But I mean, these are gaming miniatures. They're not going on Instagram or anything. I don't have an Instagram. These are good enough for the tabletop, so I'm going to call these done. So you know the drill. Click like and subscribe, it really does help the algorithm to find like-minded people. And do something creative just for the fun of it, even if it goes wrong. Especially when it goes wrong. That's how you learn, it's literally how science works. And you can only do the best you can, and that's good enough. It's not flawed or defective, it's what makes it unique, just like you. Remember, you're perfect just as you are, and people love you. Look after each other, and look after your pets, because they love you too.
You